You're crouched in the garden, hand reaching for a weed, and suddenly, something moves against your skin. A quick, cold slither. And before your brain even catches up, your heart is already pounding. Your whole body has flinched backward, and that jolt of pure, immediate panic is running through you. Most people, in that exact moment, reach for a rake, a shovel, or just bolt in the other direction. Big mistake, and in this specific case, almost always an unnecessary one. Have you felt that before? That sudden spike of fear the second you spot a snake in or around your own home? That reaction is real, and it makes complete sense in the moment. But stay with us for the next few minutes, because by the end of this video, that same fear is going to feel a lot smaller, replaced by something calmer, a genuine understanding of exactly what's sharing your yard with you and why it's actually safe to feel at ease around it. What scientists have documented about this particular snake includes an active, ongoing evolutionary arms race against one of the most potent natural toxins on the planet, a battle still playing out in real time in backyards and forests today, with new research on it being published as recently as this year. In this video, we break down exactly how to tell this snake apart from the ones actually worth worrying about, the true story behind the venom question everyone gets wrong, and exactly how you and this snake can share the same yard peacefully, with a genuinely pleasant living environment for both of you, without spending a single dollar on chemicals or repellents that barely work anyway. Start with the identification, because this single skill solves most of the fear before it even starts. And it's exactly what would have calmed your heartbeat back down in that moment in the garden. A garter snake is slim-bodied, with round pupils and a head that's roughly the same width as its neck, no triangular widening at all. That last detail matters most, since venomous pit vipers in North America, copperheads and cottonmouths among them, have a distinctly broader, blockier head shape caused by venom glands sitting behind the jaw, along with heat-sensing pits on the face that garter snakes simply don't have, and a noticeably thicker, heavier body for their length. Garter snakes almost always show 3 light-colored stripes running the full length of a darker body, sometimes yellow, sometimes more muted, occasionally broken into a checkered pattern rather than solid lines. But the stripe pattern, combined with that slim, narrow head, is usually enough on its own, even from a distance, and without getting close enough to see finer detail. Length is a useful secondary clue too. Most adult garter snakes run somewhere between 50 and 90 centimeters, occasionally longer, generally slimmer, and more modestly sized than the thicker-bodied venomous species people tend to picture when they imagine something dangerous. Most confusion happens near water, where harmless water snakes and garter snakes both get mistaken for venomous cottonmouths simply because of where they're spotted, so location alone should never be the deciding factor, and wildlife agencies specifically warn about that particular mix-up more than almost any other. Now for the venom question, since this is probably where the last bit of that unease is still sitting. Garter snakes do technically produce a mild venom made in a structure called the Duvernoy's gland, but it's built for subduing small prey like slugs and worms, not for defending against anything human-sized, and the delivery system is weak, positioned toward the back of the mouth rather than in sharp, forward-facing fangs built for injection. Reaching that venom into human skin generally requires a prolonged chewing bite rather than a quick strike, something that essentially never happens in a normal encounter. In practice, a bite feels closer to a bee sting than anything resembling a venomous snake bite, typically just mild temporary swelling and localized irritation, and only happens at all if the snake is picked up, stepped on directly, or otherwise cornered with no way to escape. Left alone, a garter snake's overwhelming first instinct is to flee, not confront, often disappearing into cover within a second or two of being noticed. And if it does feel trapped, its first line of defense is usually a foul-smelling musk released from glands near the tail, rather than a bite at all, an unpleasant but completely harmless deterrent built to make a predator lose interest, not to injure anything. What that harmless snake is actually doing in your yard is worth understanding too, because this is where things start to feel a lot less tense and a lot more interesting. It's more useful than most people realize. Garter snakes eat slugs and snails in real quantity, along with a wide range of soft-bodied insects, earthworms, and amphibian larvae. And they're opportunistic enough to take small rodents, and even the occasional bird egg when the chance comes up, functioning as a genuine chemical-free check on several of the pests most gardeners actively complain about. Unlike specialists that only target one kind of prey, a garter snake's broad, flexible diet means it keeps working across a wide range of conditions and seasons, rather than only being useful against one specific problem, hunting mostly by scent and movement rather than sight, which is part of why it's so effective at finding slow, hidden prey-like slugs tucked under leaf litter that a bird or larger predator would simply walk past. A garden with a healthy garter snake population is, more often than not, a garden already doing less damage control than one without, quietly, every day, without a single chemical involved. Here's the part that turns this from a simple pest control story into something genuinely remarkable. In parts of western North America, garter snakes prey on rough-skinned newts, amphibians that carry tetrodotoxin, the exact same lethal neurotoxin found in pufferfish, potent enough that a single newt can carry far more than enough to kill an adult human if eaten carelessly, with no known antidote once it takes effect. Most predators learn to avoid these newts entirely after one close call, if they survive it at all. Garter snakes, in specific populations that overlap with them, didn't retreat. They adapted. Researchers have traced the resistance to specific mutations in a sodium channel called NaV1.4, the protein tetrodotoxin normally locks onto to shut down nerve and muscle function by blocking the electrical signals that let muscles contract at all. Snake populations living alongside the most toxic newts have evolved sodium channels shaped just differently enough that the toxin can no longer grip onto them nearly as effectively, letting nerve and muscle signals keep firing, even with tetrodotoxin present in the bloodstream. It's a genuine, ongoing, co-evolutionary arms race, one researchers are still actively publishing new findings on. Newts under study have been found producing steadily more toxin generation after generation in the populations facing the most resistant snakes. And snake populations right alongside them keep matching that increase with greater resistance in turn, sometimes varying by 1,000-fold or more between snake populations, depending on how toxic their local newts have become. Essentially, a live, ongoing chemical negotiation being fought out one generation at a time. It isn't a free upgrade either, which is part of what makes the story so compelling. And it's a detail that didn't come from guesswork. Researchers physically tested muscle performance in snakes carrying different versions of that resistance gene. The same mutation that blocks tetrodotoxin from binding also makes the snake's own muscles fire slightly less efficiently, since the very shape change that keeps the toxin out also interferes a little with the channel's normal job. Researchers studying the most resistant populations have measured a real, physical cost. Snakes carrying the strongest resistance mutations, move noticeably slower, with measurably reduced crawl speed compared to snakes carrying the ordinary, toxin-sensitive version of the same gene. In other words, evolving the ability to eat one of the most dangerous amphibians on the continent came at the price of literally being a slightly worse athlete for the rest of that snake's life, a permanent trade-off between offense and mobility written directly into its muscle tissue. Every garter snake carrying that trade-off in your yard is a small, living example of natural selection, balancing a genuine benefit against a genuine cost, still actively unfolding, not something that finished happening millions of years ago and settled into place. It's one of the clearest, best documented examples anywhere in nature of evolution, refusing to hand out a benefit without also charging something for it. Now for what you can actually do, because understanding all of this only matters if it changes what happens the next time you're standing in your own garden. If you want this snake to genuinely thrive rather than just survive, a few small habitat choices make an outsized difference. A modest pile of rocks, logs, or brush left undisturbed in a corner of the yard gives it shelter from predators, somewhere to escape summer heat during the hottest part of the day, and a site to retreat to during brumation, the cold weather dormancy period reptiles rely on, instead of true hibernation, typically spent below the frost line in an existing burrow, rock crevice, or similarly sheltered underground space. Leaving a strip of taller grass or ground cover somewhere rather than mowing every inch flat gives it cover to hunt in without being constantly exposed to predators from above. And it's worth being genuinely careful when you do mow or use a strimmer near that kind of cover, checking the area first rather than cutting blind, since accidental mower injuries are a real and completely avoidable risk. A shallow dish of water tucked into a shaded spot benefits it the same way it benefits birds and other garden wildlife. Cheap, low effort, and genuinely used, especially during hot, dry stretches. Skipping pesticides and slug pellets matters here specifically, not just because those chemicals can harm the snake directly through contact or through eating already poisoned prey, a real risk called secondary poisoning, but because killing off the slugs and insects it feeds on removes the entire reason it would want to stay in your yard in the first place, undermining the exact benefit you'd otherwise be getting for free. Pets are usually the other big worry, and the honest answer here is reassuring too. A dog or cat that catches or mouths a garter snake might end up with some drool, a bit of that defensive musk, or very rarely mild irritation, if bitten in the mouth during a struggle. But serious harm from the snake itself is extremely uncommon, given how mild its venom is and how strongly it prefers fleeing over fighting. The bigger practical risk usually runs the other way. A snake grabbed or shaken by an excited pet is far more likely to be injured or killed than the other way around. So calling a curious dog away calmly rather than panicking protects the snake more than it protects the pet in most real encounters. If you do have a household with small children or pets that are especially prone to grabbing at wildlife, teaching the same head shape and stripe pattern, check covered earlier, gives everyone in the house a quick, reliable way to know when a hands-off approach is worth insisting on. If a garter snake shows up somewhere genuinely inconvenient, tucked against a doorway or inside a garage, the correct response is gentle relocation, not harm. Using a broom or a piece of cardboard to calmly guide it into a bucket or box, then releasing it a short distance away in cover like a hedge line or brush pile, works well and causes no lasting stress to the animal. And it's worth doing this without gloves, grabbing directly at the body where possible, since a calm, unhurried approach tends to keep the snake from panicking or musking in the first place. What to actively avoid is chemical snake repellents sold for yards. Most have little to no solid evidence behind them, despite widespread marketing claims, and some contain compounds that are more likely to harm surrounding wildlife, pets, and beneficial insects than to meaningfully deter snakes at all. Glue traps, sold for the same purpose, are worth avoiding entirely too. They cause prolonged, unnecessary suffering, and often catch other small animals never intended as the target. If repeat visits near a foundation or crawl space become a genuine ongoing issue, the more effective long-term fix is sealing gaps larger than about a quarter inch around the base of a structure with mortar, mesh, or weather stripping, and addressing whatever's actually drawing it there in the first place. Usually, a rodent problem, or an overly damp, cluttered space. The snake is simply following food and shelter into, rather than treating the snake itself as the thing that needs removing. A couple of things about garter snakes are worth knowing, simply because they rarely come up in conversation. Unlike many snake species that lay eggs, garter snakes give birth to fully formed, live young, sometimes 20 or more in a single litter, occasionally reaching up to 80 in exceptional cases, each one independent and hunting on its own within hours of being born. No parental care involved at all, effectively self-sufficient from the very first day of life. And in certain parts of Canada, most famously around Narcisse, Manitoba, tens of thousands of garter snakes gather together each spring in a handful of dense limestone dens to emerge from brumation at once, creating one of the largest concentrations of snakes anywhere on the planet. A phenomenon so striking, it draws wildlife photographers from around the world every single year to watch what looks, for a few weeks, like the ground itself is moving. That same site has become a protected wildlife area, specifically because of how unusual and significant the gathering is, a reminder that an animal treated as disposable in most backyards is, in the right context, considered a genuine natural spectacle worth protecting. Go back to that moment of spotting movement in the grass and instinctively reaching for a shovel. What's actually there, in the overwhelming majority of cases, is a slim, harmless, strikingly effective pest controller, carrying inside it a genuine, actively studied evolutionary battle against one of nature's most potent toxins, complete with a real, measurable cost. It pays for that advantage every single day of its life. None of that requires anything from you, except a moment spent checking the head shape and the stripes before reacting, and maybe a rock pile left alone in the corner of the yard instead of cleared away, along with a little more patience the next time it happens to cross your path while you're gardening. Get that right, and the same snake most people were taught to fear on sight becomes one of the quieter, more remarkable neighbors your garden has, working nights and mornings on problems you'd otherwise have to solve yourself, for nothing more than the shelter of a brush pile in a yard free of chemicals it never asked you to use in the first place. If this kind of practical, science-backed way of actually understanding the animals sharing your yard is useful to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you learned something new today, leave a like. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos exactly like this one.